Chill Computer Guy here. Today we're in Bitwig Studio. This is the 3.2 beta. This is the 8th version of the beta, so this is beta 8. And I'm going to talk about the EQ Plus. This is something they added in the 3.2. Not out yet, but it's still in beta. But the EQ has seen a lot of overhauls. And I can honestly say it's probably the best EQ in any DAW as far as getting the sound you need super quick. You'll remember that the 3.2, the very first beta, it was just, it had some colors, and that's nice because you can kind of always tell where you're at visually in the frequency spectrum. That's great. And of course, that'll go full screen, and that's nice. And then once it goes full screen, you have adjustments to all these things down here. But something that they've added since then have been very, very I call them kind of shortcuts. And it all has to do with the visual cursor. You see there's an arrow there. As I approach the edge, if I'm above or below the 0 dB line, it turns into a cut. If you're right on the line, it's going to be a shelf. If you're below the line or above the line, it's going to be a cut. And that's, you got to be right next to the edge of the spectrum. Bam! Look at that. Just like that. And then if you double click, disappears. Also, if you want to make you go right down to the bottom, the middle bottom, you can do a, whoa, that's a fairly dramatic notch filter there. Boy, what is that, 30 dB of notch? Boy, that is some serious notchage going on. All right, and then again, if you double click it, disappears. So they added those shortcuts, and that's great. That's really, really nice. They also added in the beta 8, they added a reference. You can actually run a reference track through here and see it displayed in the spectrum. Now, you got the pre, the post, and now a reference track. How many times do you have problems in your low end? You got the bass, you got the kick drum, you got some low end rumble, the 808 maybe? And it's all muddy down there. Well, the reason it's all muddy down there is if you have too many frequencies in the low end, it just turns into a muddy mess. You can kind of like pick and choose in the upper and the higher end of the spectrum, but in the lower end, if you have too many, think of everything in the lower part of the spectrum is big and tubby and huge, and you can't fit too much down there, you know? And so having a reference is super, super handy because you can, let's say in this case, I'm playing a drum loop here. I could put the bass track in the reference. So I can see the bass playing along with the drums. I can see kind of what's going on the low end. So what we have here is a couple of loops here. We have the Baker Brothers, one of my favorite sample packs. There it is right there on Splice. Yeah, get the entire pack. Every inch of this pack is really, really well recorded. And the drum loops are just incredibly recorded. So I got a drum loop 100 BPM and I got a bass loop 100 BPM. Everything's coming in raw. So if you click on this, you can see this is raw right here. Very, very nice, no stretching. If you want to have it come in raw and have it loop perfectly on the beat grid, you want to just set your tempo, or your BPM rather, to whatever is listed in the sample. In this case, it's 100. But remember, if you do decide to stretch, you have the Elastica Pro. And this, if you're going to stretch anything, I recommend Elastica Pro. This is actually really good because you might write in one tempo and you might have two loops that really work together, but of course they're in different tempos. They're not going to fit on the bar grid and they're not going to loop properly, and you're going to get all this polyrhythm, which is great if you can control it, but if it's out, if it's not on the beat grid, that polyrhythm turns into just kind of a bunch of chaos. So remember, if you do stretch, use Elastica Pro. I've tried them all, and in my opinion, that's by far the best. Not by far. They're all really good, but that one is, in my opinion, the very, very best. Leave it at its default also. All right, so let's go ahead and play. We're going to play this drum loop, and then we're going to play a bass loop, okay? And you're going to see that there's a little bit of mud going on there, and we're going to fix that up. So that's our loop right there. Now notice you have, if I make let's say a spike right here, the pre is filled in and the post is a clear line there. So as you can see, the filled in part is the pre, and then the line is the post. Now, let's double click that, bring that back down. Under the reference, we're going to select the bass track right here. Let me see, we're going to go pre. It doesn't really matter in this case, but, you know, always do, maybe do, if you have some effects on there, you have a mud in, you always want to go post. If you have some effects, you want to come after the effects, you see. So don't forget about that. Let's go ahead and play here, and you'll see the bass appears as a purple line there in the frequency spectrum. We're going to go full screen with that, and then we're going to mess around with some filters, all right? Very nice. Of course, we're doing some pretty erratic EQing there, but the idea is to show you how you can control things down here. You can control things over here. You know, you can control things in the inspector. So there's a lot of different ways to control what's going on with the EQ curve. Of course, you can just grab these and drag them around. And if you grab right above there, that's going to be the Q. So whenever you're cueing, you're always soloing. The frequency spectrum turns to a nice clear white color. That means that you're basically soloing that particular frequency right there. And then, of course, if you double click, it disappears. Very, very quick. Double click, disappears. You know, you can see how quickly you can get into EQ. Like you want to put let's put a low end cut down here. That's real nice. Okay, let's go. I want a high end shelf here. You can see how quickly you were able to do that. You know, so to have this be kind of the stock EQ in the DAW right now is very cool because this is a great EQ. You can get to where you need to be very quickly, and it's very visual. Now, another thing about these shelf filters is if you grab the Q here, you can get some pretty crazy curves going on here. And you kind of heard that in the demo. And let me just do this real quick, and you can hear how good these filters are. I mean, that's kind of an obnoxious thing, but you can see how you can really get in here, do some crazy curves, also be soloing that band as you're doing it. Like if you're ever just EQing your kick drum, very good tip is to put the low cut, put the high pass filter on there, but give it a little bit of boost right before it cuts. Kind of like that. That's a little overly dramatic for a steeper filter, maybe like an 8 or something. 8's a little too aggressive, but see, you got your 0 dB line, and then you're cutting straight down, 48 decibel Q, or 48 dB Q, so a real sharp curve. If you just push it up a little bit, just come up a little bit. Is that that's the deepest curve I got? Yeah, not quite a 96 dB would be great, kind of like a like a brick wall kind of filtration thing, but it is nice to be able to put that that low in there, and then pull this and really pull that that is going to get some good curves in there. You can see that we can do a lot with the high and the low cut filters, as well as the the high and low shell filters, and of course the band reject, or the notch filter, whatever you want to call that. Very aggressive filter. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the EQ Plus. A couple more quick things about this is, when you put some EQ points on here, you put some EQ points on here real quick, right? You can actually use this shift and shift the entire thing up and down, which is pretty unique, because maybe there's some phasing issues, or there's instruments that you gotta like how it's EQ, but it's kind of in the same area of the frequency spectrum as something else. You can kind of like push it up an octave or whatever. There's some stuff you can do with this ability to take your EQ exact curve and just shift it up and down a couple of hertz or kilohertz and whatnot. And then you have a gain. You go up to 24 gain. So that's basically a pre-post gain. This is a gain coming in. I don't know. It's basically a gain. You got your range. You got a 10 dB, 20, all the way up to 30 dB, which is crazy. This, you crank the heck out of these. You go up. Look at this, plus 30 dB. Be careful in the high end at plus 30 dB. You're gonna blow your tweeter out there. You know what I'm saying? But that's it. And then you have your adaptive Q. Adaptive Q just means the more decibels you go up or down, the steeper the slope is going to be. Kind of like the old SSL type of model compressor right there. You can see if I turn that off, you can see it real quick in the 30 dB. I go up all the way, you get a very steep curve, where if you turn that off, you get a much shallower slope. You know what I mean? So that's kind of a nice thing to have. And then of course down here you can select whatever band, or you can just have it be the analyzer. You got your pre, your post, a couple of settings for your resolution. You go small, huge. You go fast, slow, very fast. You freeze it up. Freeze it up. Hey, let's freeze it up. Here, let's play this. So there it is. So you can see, okay, what's going on is you have your shaded, filled in area. That is your pre-signal, okay? And then you have the just the stroke. You basically have the fill and the stroke. If you're a designer, you know the fill and the stroke there. Basically, outline is is going to be after the EQ, okay? So you got your pre, which is the filled in part. Your post is basically your stroke, and then your reference, which happens to be the bass, is this nice purple line. So the amount of information that's right there on the full screen, and remember, we got the GUI all zoomed in and whatnot for this tutorial. You go way out with this. Yeah, it's the DAW. I'm telling you, it's the DAW. This is the DAW. This is the king DAW right here. But yeah, you can jam up the resolution all huge. You can make the resolution. You can make it all. You can zoom in on that thing real quick. Yeah, make your shortcut keys do that. That's what I've been doing. Put that on the shortcut key. So that's it. The EQ Plus is very beautiful EQ. Yeah, I highly recommend. This is going to be an amazing upgrade because the EQ Plus, it just keeps getting better and better. The fact that you put a reference track, because the thing is, the Spectrum had the reference track, and I was like, oh, it's like if I wanted to do a reference, I had to bring a Spectrum into the chain, and now I don't have to bring that Spectrum in. I can just use the EQ. So it basically has all the properties of the Spectrum. Because why do you need a Spectrum that's separate from an EQ? I'm just like, this is a beautiful EQ. It works really well. Now you can have a reference in there. It's very nice, and a lot of different ways to control it. Of course, you can put your macros. You put all your you can modulate. You can put your your LFO modulator. Yeah, put your LFO modulator. You know, you can put a little dot right here. You know, bring that up a little bit, and you can just modulate the frequency of that. You know, why not? Why not? Why not? It's Bitwig Studio. You might as well. Oh yeah, there you go, kids. That's for all the what's that? The grinding music. That's the dubstep. Hey, there you go, kids. That's for all the dubstep fans out there. Anyway, Chill Computer Guy, if you haven't already subscribed, click that up, smash that like button, smash it. Hey, pound it with a hammer. Hey, why don't you just put your elbow on the like button? There you go. That's what I meant to say. All right, remember these videos, not for beginners, not for experts, for everybody. We're going to be doing a lot more reviews here on the 3.2. We have the saturator coming up. That's coming up next week, so be sure to click that bell. You don't want to miss that. Chill Computer Guy, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys again. Bye now.